Now you've got the U.S. Senator from Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin. Thanks for coming back on.
I'm so delighted to join you.
So, because we live in this doom loop, we are now back to dealing with an impending effort by Donald Trump to overturn the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, if he's reelected as president. So, first off, can I have your response to this claim by Donald Trump?
Well, we all know there's no better way to try to win votes than to rip away people's health care.
Right.
I mean, it's unbelievable that he is bringing this up. And, it's such a serious issue because I remember when we first passed the Affordable Care Act, as it's getting implemented, et cetera, it's many people for the first time had health insurance or the peace of mind that they wouldn't be kicked off their health insurance if they were to get sick. And it was terrifying for many families to see the constant threats that were lodged to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Remember, the House, I think, had 50 separate votes to do that. And it was ultimately John McCain, with his thumbs down in the Senate, that saved the Affordable Care Act. We just can't go back to this craziness. This was a step forward, and we need to continue to make progress, not strip back the hard-fought victories.
Well, this is a recurring, to that exact point, this is a recurring theme on the right. And I'm not asking you to kind of get into the heads of these Republican lawmakers and senators and candidates, but while they're pushing to strip away reproductive health care, while they're pushing to strip away climate protections, while they're pushing to strip away now our health care and health coverage, why do you presume that they're pushing forward with these unpopular edicts, I guess you could say, even as they're losing races as the direct result of them? I mean, you yourself alluded to the fact that back in 2018, this was the reason that Republicans lost that election in such sweeping fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because too many of them are in the pockets of powerful, wealthy interests. I mean, who's for taking away the Affordable Care Act? The big health systems and insurance companies and the big pharmaceutical companies. The folks that are behind most of the measures are their benefactors and have very powerful presence sadly, in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill. And they're playing to them. We can't have it. We have fought so long and with such high stakes to stand up to big health insurance, to make sure that they have to cover people who've been sick before, who have a pre-existing condition like diabetes, or they're a survivor of breast cancer, or they're HIV positive. We cannot go back to the days when insurance companies had the say and could simply say no. And for the big pharmaceutical companies, they protected them for way too long. And just last year, we had this major breakthrough in the Inflation Reduction Act, where we finally stood up to big pharma and said, Medicare must be able to negotiate lower prices. And already we're seeing some of the results. Vaccines are without copays for seniors. Insulin is now no more than $35 a month out of pocket for seniors on Medicare. And we're fighting hard to make sure that that will soon be true for everybody with diabetes who needs insulin. And the first 10 drugs have been named, and Medicare is in the process of negotiating down these prices. There's no way that the Republicans should defend the fact that we are currently paying more in America for life-saving medications than any other country on earth. That makes no sense. And we've made these breakthroughs, and we've got to run on them too.
Well, it is only a matter of time before Donald Trump gets out of the primary, where he is right now, and into the general, and pretends that, in fact, he loves the Affordable Care Act. So what is your message to voters in advance of Donald Trump's inevitable gaslighting on this issue?
I don't trust that listen to what he says now, right? Before he's trying to switch from primary mode to general election mode. I think you have every reason to trust that he does want to dismantle the Affordable Care Act and that he will take steps to do that, as he did when he was last president of the United States. In fact, it was so close. They had already repealed it in the House, and it was one vote away from being overturned in the Senate. He will do it again. And so it's why these elections have such high stakes. It's why we've got to stay animated and activated to make sure that people know that this next election is about not only your access to health care and the affordability of that health care, but also your basic rights and freedoms to control your body and to access the health care that you need.
You wrote the wildly popular provision in the ACA that allows young people to stay on their parents' insurance until they're 26. In plain terms, what would it mean for young people, especially if the ACA was to get overturned?
So we all know that if you go right from, say, high school into the workforce, that first job is not likely to have full health insurance benefits. You know that if you're right out of high school and maybe juggling college with a part-time job, that's not going to offer you a path to health insurance. My provision that allowed young people to stay on their parents' health insurance until they turned 26, overnight, when that measure was implemented, millions of people who had no health insurance before got it. And that, is something that we've got to fight hard to maintain, because repealing the Affordable Care Act would go back to the old days, where pretty much anybody in that age group is really unlikely to have affordable and, I should mention, comprehensive health care.
I alluded to this before, but so far the policy proposals among Republicans, like I said, are stripping women of their reproductive rights, undoing climate action, protecting the ultra-wealthy from tax audits, and now stripping healthcare from Americans. Can I have your response in general to this anti-majoritarian platform from the Republican Party?
Yeah, on one hand, Donald Trump used to try to appeal as a populist, and yet he touts just any number of proposals that so harm the working people of the United States. And we've got to make sure we are clear as the opposition party to the Trump Republicans that this is harmful policy that he is peddling. And that under his previous administration, that we lost such ground in terms of rights and freedoms. His efforts to place 3 new Supreme Court justices have resulted in many steps backwards since he left office. And it will be a while before we're going to be able to properly address that, sadly. So he left a legacy of damage, and we cannot let him become president again.
So you're running for re-election to the Senate in what is widely known as the tipping point states. That's Wisconsin. Now, Trump won that state by 0.7% in 2016. Biden won it by almost the same margin in 2020. I believe it was 0.6%. What are you doing now to ensure that this Senate seat stays in Democratic hands?
Well, first, I want to underscore your point that Wisconsin could easily decide or be the deciding state in terms of who controls the White House and which party controls the United States Senate. We are the ultimate battleground state. And I take that very seriously as I begin to mount a campaign for re-election to the United States Senate. And part of the emphasis that you see the National Republicans place on Wisconsin includes bringing their national convention to Milwaukee, Wisconsin next year. So we are squarely in their sights in terms of where they think they can make the biggest difference. So I start my reelection effort knowing that they're very much focused on Wisconsin. But I'd suggest to you that there's another reason that they really focus on me. And that is because, as we've just been discussing, I'm not afraid to stand up to those powerful, moneyed interests and fight for the working people of my state. And you know what? In addition to that, it's not enough to just be unafraid to stand up. Sometimes we got to win, and we have. And we really have to tout that as we move forward. You told the older stories of passing the Affordable Care Act. I was in the House of Representatives on a panel helping to write that. And it was my amendment that allows young people to stay on their parents' health insurance till they turn 26. But our more recent victories have included standing up to the big pharmaceutical companies and getting Medicare to negotiate lower prices. But I'm not afraid to stand up to the big multinational corporations that see profit and quarterly profits as their only goal. Corporate greed has impacted Wisconsin workers over decades of poor trade policies or favoring conditions where they bring manufacturing from a big manufacturing state like Wisconsin overseas, offshore, where the cost of production is lower because there's no laws to protect workers, to encourage unions, to protect workers' safety, to protect the environment. Yes, it's cheaper to produce in countries that have those circumstances. And Buy America policies, which I consider myself to be the Senate champion of Buy America policies, the simple proposition that when we are using taxpayer dollars, that should benefit U.S. workers and small businesses. I mean, that makes total sense when we're talking about taxpayer dollars. And we've won. I've been pursuing these in the infrastructure bill. We got it in the infrastructure bill. In the CHIPS and Science Act that we passed last year, I got it in the CHIPS and Science bill. We put it in the Inflation Reduction Act so that this new clean energy, renewable energy economy, that U.S. workers can be in the lead, not following. And so these are exciting opportunities. When you stand up to those powerful interests, you can win. And then the last one I wanted to mention was the extremists that we are seeing have greater and greater influence and power. They were successful after a multi-decade fight to overturn Roe versus Wade with the Dobbs decision last year. They are introducing and leading to the introduction of all sorts of anti-LGBTQ, anti-woke, if you will, pieces of legislation. They are having a real impact at all levels of government. And it's why after Dobbs, when they put marriage equality in the crosshairs as their next step, I led the effort to pass the Respect for Marriage Act in the Senate, standing up to those extremists, but still being able to bring in 12 of my Republican colleagues to join all Democrats to pass that measure. We're almost on the year anniversary of President Biden signing the Respect for Marriage Act into law, which of course repealed the old Defense of Marriage Act. And so I just want people to feel some hope and encouragement that we can stand up to these wealthy, powerful interests, and we can win. And it's hard work, but we've got to be there to do it.
Well, you mentioned wealthy, powerful interests, which brings me to your potential opponent in this 2024 election. It may be a guy named Eric Hovde, who is a multimillionaire banker who lives in Laguna Beach, California. Now, he was asked where he spends most of his time, whether he spends that time in California or Wisconsin. I'm going to read you his quote. Quote, "This is laughable. I'm born in Wisconsin, raised in Wisconsin, and graduated from the University of Wisconsin. My home is Wisconsin. I have a business in Wisconsin, so that's my response," which of course is a lot of words to avoid answering the actual question. Can I get your response to the prospect of a California banker running to represent Wisconsin in the U.S. Senate?
We've made a little light of that recently. You know, you're right. He owns, he's the president and CEO of a bank, a big regional bank. He lives in Laguna Beach. And we kind of suggested that there might be an open U.S. Senate seat in California.
That's right.
Right? You know, maybe that's what he's looking to do. But no. He protests. He says, I'm going to run in Wisconsin. Um, you know, I think Wisconsinites will be very interested to know about where he spends his time, and the fact that that he's missed several important votes in the state. And I think that Wisconsinites really want somebody who is a resident, frequent resident of the state of Wisconsin, to be their representative, working hard for them in the United States Senate. And I think Wisconsinites also want somebody who gets them, who's worked hard and who has known what it means to make an honest wage, who knows what it's like to have to fight for recognition of their union, who knows what it's like when it's hard to make the budget, hard to keep your budget because the cost of healthcare and medicines is so high. I think people of Wisconsin want somebody who really gets them, and that's not Eric Hovde.
It's hard to see why Republicans wouldn't want to go the way of Dr. Oz in New Jersey, but here we are.
Right. Well, that is their playbook, right? It's a page from the Republican playbook these days. They are actively recruiting multimillionaires to run in the swing states, the battleground states, so that they can write a hefty check. We have another multimillionaire in Wisconsin who's looking at getting into the race. It's like they're dueling, like, I'll put in $15 million of my own wealth. Well, I'll put in $20 million of my own wealth. They've literally been saying those things to the media. And it's quite a sort of new chapter in how politics work on the Republican side of the ledger.
Yeah, and to your exact point, I mean, having these multimillionaires run their own races, it does allow them to self-finance so that they can divert that money to other places where they might be able to use it otherwise. And so if they just have multimillionaires running in all of their races who can self-finance, then they can focus on down-ballot races. They can focus on congressional races and on and on. So this is, again, just a way to kind of allow them
super
to
PACs,
manipulate
right?
Exactly. Just anywhere where they can find the money, they're taking advantage. Can you talk about Hovde's position on both abortion rights and the ACA in terms of what his election could mean?
First of all, he has a record because he did run for U.S. Senate in 2012. He came in second in the Republican primary in Wisconsin, and then went back to being a California bank owner. But that said, he took positions on these issues. He supports a nationwide abortion ban. And he supported repeal of the Affordable Care Act. In fact, that was something he vigorously ran on in his previous campaign in 2012. He also is somebody, like many of the Republicans, who look to decimate the two bedrock programs that have been earned benefits for seniors in the U.S. He would look at radical changes to both Social Security and Medicare. And those are some of the best ideas that we've ever had. They were Democratic ideas, but they have stood the test of time in making sure that when we work hard and play by the rules, that we can retire with dignity and security.
Well, now that Joe Manchin is no longer running for Senate in West Virginia, how does that impact the stakes of your election in Wisconsin?
So right now in the United States Senate, there are 51 Democrats or people who caucus with the Democrats and 49 Republicans. Joe Manchin represents a state that went overwhelmingly for Trump in 2020. And it will be difficult for a Democrat other than Joe Manchin to successfully wage a race in West Virginia. So then we'd be down to 50-50 in the Senate. Every battleground state then becomes a target, and Wisconsin is one of them. So they're going to go all in, including having their convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin next year. They're going to go all in trying to defeat me. And it is a critical race to win in order to keep a progressive Senate and keep our country moving in the right direction, not repealing our rights and freedoms.
To that point, how can we help your campaign?
I certainly would encourage everyone to go to tammybaldwin.com. There's many ways you can help. There are ways you can help that include donating to my campaign, and you can do that online. If you're in Wisconsin, there's lots of volunteer activities. And no matter where you are on the country, you can follow me on social media and help us expand reach to the message of the important work that I've done, the victories I just told you about when we stood up to powerful interests and we won, and the many battles we still have to fight.
And just to underscore the importance of donating now early, I know that we're just about a year out from the election, but being able to donate now and get on the airwaves now would allow the senator to kind of define herself before Republicans have the chance to redefine her in their own image, which will of course be full of obfuscations and misinformation. So with that said, again, I'll put that link in the post description of this video and the show notes on the podcast. So Senator Baldwin, thank you so much for taking the time, and best of luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you.